All right, so this week we have Brian Roberson teaching sequencing, mapping sequences from either something you get from Google Drive or from one of the many sequence clubs out there like Ron Howard or PPD or Diana or so many more. So Brian, you have the floor and it's all you.
Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks everybody for showing up. A couple days ago, apparently someone had a conflict, so I was asked to do this, and so I put it together. I generally help other people do this on the private message and on Zoom and stuff, but this class is, I'm not going to try to teach people how to map sequences because there's a whole lot of people out there smarter than me. But what I've done is I've had LOR since 2004, and I switched to xLights in 2017. And the problem I had is I had a very large display from LOR, and I couldn't really start from a small display with xLights. My mindset wouldn't let me do that. So I had a lot of stuff to build, a lot of pixels to push, and I had to learn the xLights software. And so building all the props and sequencing wasn't going to happen in a year or two. So about the time I started xLights, vendors started popping up. There's some out there. Pardon me if I don't name them all, but Extreme Sequences, PPD, Magical Light Sequences, and there's some other ones, Showstoppers, and other people that are doing it on the side. So what I'm going to do here is going to be fairly brief, but I'm going to show you how I map one from each one of the three that I mentioned, Extreme, PPD, and Tom Bet George, Magical Light Shows. And within those songs, whole house effects, etc., some things aren't quite centered when you bring it over to your own display, and I'm just going to briefly show you how I make their song work on my display. And it's easy for anybody to do, and so pardon me if this sounds a little choppy because it's very hard for me to move around in PowerPoint here. I'm not an IT guy, and I'm not a software guy, so bear with me here for a minute. Okay, so I live in Fort Pierce, Florida. I'm retired now, so I have time to do this. And this is an example of my display. This is my display. And so one of the first things you probably should do before if you elect to purchase or use other people's sequences, you need to figure out what your layout is designed for. For example, mine is more for symmetry and whole house effects, whereas some people have a spread out display and are starting out, may not have enough pixel density to do good whole house effects. So you look at the song and figure out what's going to look good on your display. Now, one of the things about mapping other songs is when you go to bring a song in, just because it's on someone else's model doesn't mean you can't put it anywhere in your show on any of the other models. So what we're going to do first is you set up your directory to some degree. I'm just going to show you mine. It's brand new xLights kind of stuff, muddling through it. But I go to my, this is my show directory right here. Is the sequence, and that's what I call it. Inside I have all of my songs, etc., my XML files, and so forth. So what I did before I started bringing other people's songs in is I created an imported folder, and I put names for everybody who I use sequences from, and I download that particular sequence into their songs, or into these folders, and open them up and render them there. So, for example, let's go to an extreme sequence song. I'll go to my extreme folder, and we'll do A Million Dreams. Now, now, if you click through it, and if you see this, the key bindings and networks and stuff like that from the imported file, when they send you the file and package it up, you're essentially getting their show network. So what you need to do first is take your xLights, and you need to change the show folder to theirs, or where you have the song at. So I go to my imported, I go down to Extreme, and I find that song, A Million Dreams. And so when you see backup and render cache, you've gone one too many. So this is going to be that particular show folder. So what I do is I select the folder, I change xLights to their show folder, and it should be changing here in a minute. I think because I'm recording. So now you can see I have extreme sequence layout on my in my xLights. Jordan, do you know how I get rid of this little share tab that's got all the managed participants and everything off the top so I can get to my controls? Jordan?
I think you just click on it and you can drag it to the left or right to one of your other screens.
Okay. Okay.
We don't see it, but isn't there an up arrow thing on it?
Yeah, I got it. Thanks. I'm just scared to try stuff without screwing it up. Okay, so now that I'm in that extreme folder for A Million Dreams, I go in and I actually open a sequence. It defaults to that particular folder. I click on the XML file, A Million Dreams, and open it. And the reason I do this is because when you get a song from somebody else and it's packaged up on their computer, all these effects and videos or whatever are going to have a file path on that particular computer. So what you need to do is move everything onto your local hard drive. So you open the song, it shows it done, and then you render it. And then once you render it, and then now it is on my computer, and you can play it, and it looks pretty much like the video that you saw on the website when you picked the song. So now that all that is on your computer, you can go back to Setup and change back to your actual show directory you're going to be using for your Christmas show. And so now you create a new sequence. I got a little render stuff going on here. Now, whenever I buy the music off Amazon, I always store the audio in the same folder. So the audio won't be in the folder that you get from the vendor or the person you get it from. So you go to where your song is. It should be in your show folder. And set it up. Now, I didn't show you there, but one of the things that's important and between vendors is the layer blending. I know that Extreme Sequence, Ron Howard, doesn't use a lot of layer blending, so it'll make your sequence not look similar. So when you're back and you render it in the show folder of Extreme show folder that you get, double check to see if they've got layer blending checked or not. I know that this song does not, so I go and uncheck it, and then I just set it up. So now I have a blank slate. So if you review the song on video when you get it, you'll notice some whole house effects. For example, Ron uses a lot of shock waves and meteors and morphs and stuff, and they make whole house effects look good. So but when they get imported into your display, they're not necessarily centered. So now I go to import the song that I just saved onto my computer from Extreme. I go find that folder, go to the imported file, go to Extreme. I go to the XML file and I open it up. This is all of his props, and of course these are all mine. Now, what you might want to do as far as setting up your layout, if you're going to use a particular vendor or more than one, you need to pay attention to how they have their stuff grouped. And you can look in their layout. And what you need to do is kind of duplicate it somewhat or get a mental reference so you can transfer the effects over. For example, I know on this song, his house all, on that particular song, has every effect that he has on that house and in his yard, with the exception of the matrices. So you have to go in and check yours. And so I created an all lights, which is everything but the matrices. And what I do is I'll just put the whole house effect on first. Now, there's a lot, you can save your mapping, you can do it all. That's not what this is for. I don't really do this. It's just how I set everything up when I transfer a sequence. So all I do is I map the all light, the whole house sequence, and then I render it. There's a lot of good videos on auto mapping and mapping, and I just, being fairly new at this, I don't even pretend to know half as much as all those videos have. Now, when you're going to map arches are arches, many trees are many trees, stars, trees, etc. There's really nothing you have to change. If you don't like an effect, you can go in and play with the effect yourself. But the xLights treats a whole house effect. They treat your layout kind of as a matrix, and there's a center point. And if you buy a sequence from a vendor whose house may be off to one side or another, his 0 point on the XY axis or his 50% point might be off to the left. So if you put it onto your house, it's not going to be centered. So what I do is I pull my model preview up and I just go start clicking on some of these effects right here. Now you can see, I don't know if that's big enough, but you can see how that effect is not centered appropriately. On my house, it is on extremes, but not mine. So what I merely do is I go up and I adjust the X coordinate to move it left or right, and I start at 50. And it moves it over. Now you'll notice that one came over and there's still one over there. If you go to look at the sequence on the effects, it's got multiple layers. So there's a second one there that needs to be moved as well. And so now that's kind of centered. And you just go through and do the same for all. You know, some of them are already, that's not really it's just a left to right shockwave. But anyways, you get the point. And that way, if you start pulling all the models into yours, some people have a hard time figuring out which effect is not centered. So if you start with the whole house and just bring it in, and then your group models, you can adjust them individually. Now then, of course, when you go back, you get all that done. For example, you go back and you import it, it'll default right back to it. And then you can start just bringing everything in, house verts. And then once you get it all done, that's pretty much it. So, and then it'll look like this. That's the same song already done.
can say it waiting up.
And then as you go, you can get video content and et cetera, and add it to your show. So that's extreme sequences. My house again is built mainly for whole house effect and symmetry and some videos. So that's why I selected that particular song. So now go to Clyde's PPD. Now, Clyde doesn't use, he uses whole house effects, but they're not as pronounced as extreme. But Clyde's got a lot going on in his sequences. And let me see. So the new one that just came out, this is his layout. Again, it's very important that when you get a song, you render it in the folder you have it stored. So you can, this is his layout. So you can get all the effects and everything onto your local hard drive. And you just open a sequence. And now everything is on your computer. So again, you go back to the setup. And I apologize. I know this is probably rather boring stuff to watch me go through this, but for the new guys especially, it's very important. And you go to your show folder. Now with Clyde's Pixel Pro's stuff, let me set this up. New sequence. Now Clyde does use layer blending. I mean, uses layer blending in his. And I was told to go through the motions here and steps so people could see that don't know, or I already had all these set up. But if you look at the info and media, you'll see layer blending is automatically set, so that's good. And you just go to, when you import his, you go back to the file where you just rendered it in his show folder. And you look at how he has everything set up. So again, this gives you an opportunity to go, and if you want to set some groups up that match his, that's fine as well. Just because you have a group in your own show folder doesn't mean it has to be used. And if you don't use it, it's not going to affect anything. You can you can just leave it blank and it won't affect anything. So because there's really not a lot of whole house effect in this, I have to see what works for me. So I created an all roof group like he did. And what I do is I just load that in first without anything else, map it. I don't worry about saving the mapping file again, because once I get it like I have it in mine, there it is, and you just render it. And so now just to check to see what it looks like, you just go ahead and click on the effects. And then when you put it in there, it just... I'ma be under the mistletoe. In the winter snow. But I'ma be under the mistletoe. I'll go ahead and map another effect. Again, you don't have to worry about you know, arches and trees. They all look the same. So let's go and try verticals. He's got house verticals. So I just systematically go through mine and add them one at a time and see what they look like. Okay, where are my house verticals here? That's special. So anywho, and that's pretty much it. So what I'm trying to show you is like his verticals weren't enough for my house. So I actually added the verticals again to my house horizontals. And it just and the verticals. So then the last one is we'll go to magical light sequence. Now, magical light sequences, I may be wrong, but they're the first ones I knew that did the easy import where there's not much there. So Star Wars, go to his show folder. Anyway, so now this is Tom's show folder, and there's his stuff. You render it, and the same thing occurs. We won't go through that again. And so once you render it, now you can look at the other layout of the vendor, and you see how they have, like for instance, all on this one means everything but the singing faces, everything but singing faces, and I think you forgot the one spinner there, and house effect, lawn props, etc., etc. I just switch back to your show folder one more time. And I promise we're coming to an end quick. So then we'll just go ahead and go to his, open a new song. Find the music. And he does layer blending as well. Those are just silly things to pay attention to. It'll make a difference in the way it looks. And then Tom's is pretty easy to import. So it's all self-explanatory. The singing faces on this one were a little difficult for me because there's not a lyric track. They were just the RGB. So, you know, all lights, all house. And keep in mind, you can erase, you can delete and add and go over as many times you want on these effects. It's not going to hurt anything. And it's pretty easy, so don't be scared to try anything. And you finished with Magical Light Show. You generally don't need to adjust any whole house effects because his center is like the center of the screen instead of the center of his house. And this is the easy import. So anyways, in closing, I had a nice presentation on PowerPoint, but I couldn't get it working correctly. It's just but anyways, there's a lot of fellow xLighters that know a lot more than I do. You know, when you go to do your show, don't be scared to test everything out. There's a lot of people that if you accidentally delete something, will show you how to get it back. Know what type of songs look best on your layout. I'm not promoting necessarily buying sequences, but some people just don't have the time to do that. And there's a lot of good products out there. So having said that, I apologize for the boring a lot of people here, but just make sure that you render the song in the folder that you place it in. So all their files will now become housed on your local computer. That way, when you go to bring them into your show, you won't have any red screens or files missing, especially in GIFs. So I guess at this point, I'm going to open it up for questions. Again, thank you for tolerating me, and see you guys around.
All right. Well, I want to appreciate Brian for you putting this together so quickly. If you guys didn't know from when he was talking about it, he got thrown into this last minute because the presenter tonight backed away for, I think, a family issue or emergency. So just want to appreciate you stepping up and bringing this together, and hopefully everybody learned something.
The xLights project exists because of people like you. Help continue the project by making a donation today at xlights.org/donate.